What's up guys? Today we're going to be taking Neovim from absolute zero and turn it into something pretty amazing. We're going to be creating a pretty up-to-date and modern setup with a configuration written in Lua and making use of a lot of popular plugins to get a nice looking editor with proper syntax highlighting through Neovim's Treesitter, intelligent code completions with the built-in LSP, a file explorer, Git integration, and an awesome fuzzy finder called Telescope to easily find files and text throughout your projects. There are some other easier options like using Vim as a plugin in a modern IDE, or using some pretty cool pre-built Neovim configurations like AstroVim or LunarVim, which will get you up and running pretty quickly. Personally, I find using Vim to be a lot of fun, and I enjoy the process of making the editor my own. I'm also by no means a Neovim expert. I still have a lot to learn, and there are some great resources out there like Chris at Machine's YouTube series called Neovim from Scratch, which I learned a lot from. With that said, let's dive right in. If you want to follow along with me, I'll have a link in the description to a GitHub repo with everything I'm going to be showing you, and make sure you're using a true color terminal like iTerm2 for the color scheme to work properly, and also a nerd font. I'm personally using Meslo Nerd Font. For specifics on my terminal setup, I would check out the previous video in this series. So the first thing we have to do is install Neovim. I'm going to be using Homebrew to do this. You need to make sure that you're using the current stable release version, which at the time of recording is 0.8. Let's go ahead and install it by running brew install Neovim. Now that that's done, to check if Neovim installed correctly, we can do nvim -- version. And as you can see here, we have 0.8 with a build type of release, which is exactly what we want. I want to first take a step back and give you a general overview of what the file structure will look like at the end of this project. As you can see here, everything will be within the .config folder located in our home directory. Inside of that, we'll have another folder called Nvim, and inside of that, a file called init.lua. This file will be our most important one, as Neovim will look at it every time it starts to load our configuration. Its job will primarily be just to import all of our other Lua files located in the Lua folder. Inside of this folder, we'll have another folder with our name, or whatever else you want to call it, and inside of that, a folder called core. This will have a Lua file for our color scheme configuration, another one for our basic options and settings, and another one for our custom keybinds or keyboard shortcuts. We'll also have a plugins folder, which will have Lua files for configuring and setting up our plugins. And finally, we're going to have a plugins-setup.lua file, which will be responsible for setting up our plugin manager, which we're going to be using to install our plugins. In this case, we're going to be using a tool called Packer. It will also list all of the plugins we want to install. Let's start setting this up. Make sure you're located in your home folder indicated by the tilde. First, you want to make sure that you have a .config folder here. You can create it if you don't by doing make directory.config. I already have it though, so I'm just going to move into it. Then we want to create the nvim directory. So let's do make directory nvim. Now let's move into that. In here, let's create the init.lua file by running touch init.lua, and the Lua folder by running make directory lua. Now let's move into the Lua folder. I'm going to clear the terminal window. Now let's create the folder with our name by running make directory and then our name. You can use your name here or whatever else you want to use. Let's move into that. And then let's create our core and plugins directories. Let's do make directory core and make directory plugins. Let's also create the plugins-setup.lua file by running touch plugins-setup.lua. Now that we've created all of that, we can start working with our core configuration. So let's move into the core folder. In here, we want to create 3 files. So touch colorscheme.lua for our color scheme, touch keymaps.lua for our keybinds and our keyboard shortcuts, and touch options.lua for our basic settings and options. Let's actually move a couple levels up back to the nvim folder because we want to import these in the init.lua file. So let's go cd level up to Hosyan, another level up to Lua, and another level up to the nvim folder. Let's clear this. If we do ls here, you can see we have the init.lua file here. Let's open it up with Neovim. So let's do nvim init.lua. In here, we need to import the 3 Lua files within our core folder, which include the options file, the Keymaps file, and the color scheme file. To do this, we can use a require statement and then the path to the file, ignoring the Lua folder. So we can use hosyan.core.options and then do the same for our Keymaps file, and then do the same for our color scheme file. Awesome. So let's save those changes and quit. Now let's go back to the core folder so that we can edit the options file. So let's do cd into the Lua folder, then the folder with our name, and then the color folder. Let's now open the options.lua file with Neovim. In here we have access to the Vim global variable, and we're going to be using vim.opt to set our options. I'm actually going to save it into a local variable called opt, which we're going to be using for conciseness. The first thing I want to do here is configure my line numbers. By the way, you can use double dashes for comments. I want to set relative number to true, and I also want to set number to true. To show you what this does, I'm going to save these changes and quit Neovim, and then I'm going to open the file again. As you can see here, I get absolute line numbers wherever my cursor is, and anywhere else I get relative line numbers. So if I want to move to opt.relative number, I know it's 3 lines below me, so I can do 3j, and then whenever I move my cursor, I also know what absolute line number I'm in. The next thing I want to configure is tabbing and indentation. I'm going to set opt.tab stop to 2. I'm going to do shift width to 2. I'm going to do expand tab to true and auto indent to true. What you need to know here is that this sets us up pretty nicely to use 2 spaces for tabbing. If you want to use 4 spaces or something else, you can change these 2s to 4s, and that'll set it up for you. Next up, we're going to configure line wrapping. Here we're going to set wrap to false. This will prevent text from wrapping, which is ideal when you're writing code. Let's now configure our search settings. Here we're going to set ignore case to true and smart case to true. To show you what this does, let's save and quit, and let's open the file again. I'm going to add here a lowercase hello and an uppercase hello. And now if I use a / to search and type out in lowercase, it's going to assume that I want a case insensitive search, and it's going to match both of these. But if I type out hello with uppercase, it's going to assume that I want a case sensitive search and match the hello with the uppercase only. Next, we're going to set up our cursor line by doing cursor line equals to true. To show you this, let's save and quit and then open up the file again. As you can see here, now we have a line wherever our cursor is. Now let's work a little bit with the appearance of Neovim. We're going to set term GUI colors to true so that our color scheme can work properly. Remember that you need to be using a true color terminal like iTerm2 for this to work. We're also going to set the background to dark. This will make light and dark color schemes default to dark. And we're also going to set sign column equal to yes. You don't have to worry about this one too much. To show you what happens once we do this, let's save and quit and open up again. As you can see here, things are starting to look pretty different. Now we're going to configure our backspace key. We're going to set this backspace equal to indent EOL start. Don't worry about this one too much. It just makes your backspace key work properly. Now we're going to configure our clipboard. This is pretty important. We're going to do op.clipboard append unnamed plus. Basically what this will do is force Neovim to use the system clipboard when you paste anything with the yank operator or delete or anything else. This really comes in handy when you want to copy something from within Neovim to somewhere else on your computer. Now I'm going to configure some settings concerning split windows. When I split vertically, I want to split to the right, so I'm going to do split right equals to true. And when I split horizontally, I want to split below, so let's do split below is equal to true. Final thing I'm going to set is this thing right here. I'm going to show you what it does in a second. Essentially, it's going to change what the dash means within Neovim. Let's save these changes and quit and open this up again. Now if I do hello dash hello, go to the beginning and then do DW, it now considers the dash as a part of the word. With that, we're pretty much done with our basic settings and options. Let's save and quit. Let's clear this. The next thing I want to do is configure my preferred color scheme to make things look a bit nicer, but this is a plugin, so we're going to have to configure Packer to be able to install it. If you remember from earlier, we're going to configure Packer in the plugins-setup.lua file located in the folder with our name, so let's move up to that folder. As you can see, in here we have the plugins-setup.lua file. Now let's open it up with Neovim. Plugins-setup.lua. We're going to be using a tool called Packer to install our plugins. I would check out the documentation to learn more about setting it up. From the documentation, I'm going to copy some lines of code they have in there, and I'm going to paste them in here. I wouldn't worry about it too much, just copy this code from my repo. Essentially what this does is that if Packer is not installed, it's going to go ahead and install it when we open up Neovim. And what this does is that whenever we save this specific file, Packer is going to install any missing plugins, update any old ones, and remove any of the ones we're not using anymore. The next thing we want to do here is import Packer into this file. We're going to use a protected call to do this. It's a pattern we're going to see often. Let's go ahead and import it. We're going to do local status Packer is equal to protected call require Packer. Next, we're going to check if not status, then just return. Essentially, this will try to import Packer, and then if it fails, we'll just return and not do anything else. Now we want to configure our plugins. To do this, we're going to do return packer.startup and then function use end. According to the documentation, we also want to add this in here. Don't worry too much about it, just copy it from my repo or the documentation and add it in there. Now we can start listing all of the plugins we want to install. The first one is actually Packer itself, so we're going to do this right here to install Packer, as Packer can manage itself. And then as I mentioned, we want to install my preferred color scheme. To do this, I'm going to do use bluz71/vim nightfly GUI colors. This is literally just a Git repository. Most of the time you can look up the repository and it'll tell you how to install it with a plugin manager, or you can just look at the name of the repo and who it belongs to. And that should be all you need for Packer to install it properly. Alright, let's save these changes and quit. Now remember, we want to import this file from init.lua. That's really important. So let's go back up 2 levels to the Nvim folder. Let's open init.lua, and then let's require it. We're going to do require plugins-setup, which is the name of the file. Let's save and quit. Go back to the folder with our name, so cd lua/Phocian. And now let's open the plugins-setup file again with Neovim. As you can see here, Packer automatically recognized the color scheme we wanted to install, and it went ahead and installed it. Let's press Q to close this out. You can see now that whenever I save this file, Packer is going to check if it needs to install any new plugins, update them, or remove them. Let's close that again by pressing Q. Now let's exit. Now that the color scheme is installed, we can properly configure it. Let's move into the core folder, and let's open the colorscheme.lua file. Now we want to set up the color scheme. We can do this by doing vim.cmd color scheme nightfly. This actually allows us to run Vim script within Lua. But we want to do this in a protected way in case the color scheme is not installed. So instead of doing this, we're going to do local status underscore is equal to pcall vim.cmd color scheme nightfly. So we're using a protected call here to make sure that we handle the case where the color scheme is not installed. So if not status, then print color scheme not found, and we'll just return. And let's delete that top line. Let's save and quit. And if we open up that file again with Neovim, you're gonna see that the color scheme has been set up properly and things are looking a lot nicer. All right, let's quit Neovim. The next thing I wanna show you is how I configure my keymaps. We're gonna open up keymaps.lua, and then the first thing we wanna configure here is our leader key. I'm gonna set this to space. For those of you that don't know, the leader key allows us to set up a bunch of different custom keyboard shortcuts or keybinds that don't clash with the Vim defaults. Essentially, all of these keymaps we define will be prefixed with the leader key, in this case, the space key, which is really easy to access, and it can be really powerful. The default leader key in Vim is the \, but I think space is a lot easier to access. Now to configure our keymaps, we want to use vim.keymap, and again I'm going to save this in a local variable called keymap for conciseness. Now we're going to set up first our general keymaps. To set a keymap, we're going to do keymap.set. Then we're going to specify which mode this keymap will apply to. In this case, I want to do insert mode. Then what the keys are going to be, so I'm going to do JK, and then what the action will be. So this is going to be escape. Essentially what this means is that in insert mode, JK will be the same as hitting the escape key, which takes you back to normal mode. To show you this, I'm gonna save and quit and then open the file again. And as you can see here, I'm gonna do I to go into insert mode and JK to go out. Next, I'm gonna add a normal mode keymap. This means that in normal mode, when I press leader and H, it's gonna clear search highlights. Let's save and quit, open up again. Let's search for keymap. And then if I do leader and H, it's gonna clear. So I just pressed space and H. Next, we're gonna set this guy right here. In normal mode, when I press the X key, which deletes a single character, it's going to delete the character, but it's not gonna copy it into a register, which is what it normally does. Next, I'm gonna add these two. These mean that in normal mode, I'm gonna use leader plus and leader minus to increment and decrement numbers. Let's save and quit and open this file again. I'm going to add a 2 here, and then I'm going to do leader minus to decrement and leader plus to increment. Next, I'm going to add these keymaps. These are some of the keymaps I really enjoy using. SV is going to split window vertically, SH will split window horizontally, SE will make the split windows equal width and height, and SX will close a split window. Let me show you this in action. Let's open it up again. Now if I do leader SV, I'm going to split vertically. Leader SH, I'm going to split horizontally. Leader SX, I'm going to close. Leader SX, I'm going to close. Note that if you have split windows in Neovim, the mouse is available, so you can change the width with your mouse, which I think is the best approach, honestly, instead of using keymaps. And then I can do leader SE to make the equal width again. Let's close with leader SX. And finally, I'm going to add some keymaps for managing tabs. Leader TO will open a new tab, leader TX will close the current tab, leader TN will go to the next tab, and leader TP will go to the previous tab. Let's save and quit so I can show you this. Then open it up again. Let's do leader TO, so I'm opening new tabs, leader TP to go back, leader TN to go to the next one, leader TX to close, and leader TX to close. Cool. Let's save and quit. Because we were just setting up split windows, I want to take this opportunity to add another plugin. So let's go back up to the folder with our name and open up the plugins-setup.lua file. Let's go down here to our list of plugins. All right, so I want to add this plugin right here. This is chris2me/vim-tmux navigator. Essentially what it will allow me to do is use Control, H, J, K, and L to navigate between splits and also navigate to tmux. The next video I'm going to be making is about combining Vim with tmux, so this plugin is in preparation for that. It's going to help us a lot. Save this, and then you're going to see it's going to install that plugin. Let's press Q, and then quit Neovim, open up this file again, and then let's create some splits. So let's do leader SV, leader SH, and as you can see here, now I can use Control K and J to move between splits above and below each other, and Control H and Control L to move between splits that are vertically separated. Let's close these. I want to add another plugin that will help us with window management. It's called Vim Maximizer. Essentially what it allows us to do is maximize splits and restore them back to their original size. Let's save this so that Packer installs it. As you can see here, it installed it. Let's press Q, then right quit. Now we're going to modify our keymaps to make use of this plugin. Let's move into the core folder, and then let's open the keymaps.lua file. Go to the bottom. We're going to add a new section for plugin keymaps, and then we're going to add this keymap. What it does is that in normal mode, we can use leader SM to maximize the split window and also restore it back to its original size. Let's save this and quit and open up the file again. Now if I use leader SV to split the window in half, and then I do leader SM, I'm going to maximize the window, and then leader SM again, and I'm going to restore it to the original size. Let's quit. Let's go up a level again, and let's reopen the plugins-setup.lua file. Now I'm going to add two more plugins that I find essential to my Vim workflow. One of them is called Vim Surround, and the other is called Replace with Register. Let's save this file so that they get installed. Q here, and then let's quit and reopen the file. Let me show you what you can do now. With something like Vim Surround, let's say I want to surround ensure_packer with double quotes. I can do YS, a motion, and then the character I want to surround ensure packer with. So I can do YS, the motion would be W for word, and then the character I want to surround it with is double quote. Let's say I want to delete these surrounding quotes. I can do DS and then the character that is surrounding, so double quote. Let's undo that. Let's say I want to change these double quotes to single quotes. I can do CS and then the character I want to change, so double quotes, and then the character I want to change it to, so single quote. If that seems confusing, you can check out the documentation to learn more about it. Now with the Replace with Register plugin, I can use GR to copy text and then replace something else with what I copied. Let's say I copy text 1 with YW. Let's then move to text 2, and then I'm going to do GRW to replace text 2 with what I copied. This applies to a lot of different motions, and it can be really powerful. Along the same line, we're going to add this next plugin called comment.nvim, which we're going to use to make commenting things out a lot easier. Let's save this file so that Packer installs it. Press Q, then we're going to quit. This is the first plugin we actually need to configure to enable it. To do this, we're going to move over to the plugins folder. I'm going to clear this terminal window, and in here we're going to create a file called comment.lua. After we create it, I'm going to open it up with Neovim. We now need to import the comment plugin into this file. We're going to use a protected call to do this to make sure we're not using it if it's not installed. To do this, we're going to do local setup comment is equal to pcall require comment, and then if not set up, then return and end. Essentially, this will import the comment plugin into this variable, and it will return if it isn't installed. If it is installed, then we need to call comment.setup. Let's write and quit. Like our other Lua files, we actually needed to import this file in init.lua. So let's move up to the Hosyan folder, then up to Lua, and then up to Neovim. And then we're going to open init.lua with Neovim. Now we're going to add a require statement here. This is going to be hosyan.plugins.comment comment, which is the path to the file. Let's write and quit. Let's go back to the folder with our name, so cd lua/Hossein, and let's open the plugins-setup.lua file again. I'm going to show you now what we can do with this comment plugin. Essentially, we can use GC plus a motion to toggle comments on different things. For example, let's say I want to comment this line I'm currently in. I can do GCC, and to undo that, I can do GCC again. Let's then say I want to comment from line 1 to line 9. I can do GC9J, and if I want to undo that, I can do GC9J. With that done, we're ready to move on to some really cool plugins that will really take our Neovim setup to the next level. I'm going to go down here to our plugins, and near the top, I'm going to add this plugin right here. Basically, this plugin gives us a lot of Lua functions that many other plugins make use of. So let's save the file so that we can install that, and then press Q. The next thing we're going to add is a file explorer. So we're going to add this plugin right here. It's called Nvim-Tree. We're going to save the file so that we can install it. Now that that's done, we can press Q. And now this is another plugin that we need to configure to enable it. So let's quit. Let's clear this terminal window. Let's move to the plugins folder and create a new file called nvim-tree.lua. Let's open it up with Neovim. Let's import the plugin with a protected call. Now the documentation recommends that we add these 2 lines, and then to finish this up we're going to do nvim-tree.setup. Then we're going to write and quit, and again we need to import this file in init.lua, so we're going to move up to Hossein, up to Lua, and then up to Nvim, and then we're going to open the init.lua file. Down here we're going to require hossein.plugins.nvim-tree, which is the path to the file we just created. We're going to write and quit. And now I'm going to open the file again. Now that the plugin is available to us, we can do :nvim-tree toggle, and we'll have a file explorer to the left, which I really enjoy using for managing my projects, navigating, adding files, deleting files, changing names, all that sort of thing. We can navigate the tree with our normal motions. To open a folder, I can do Enter, and then I can use J and K to move up and down. I actually want to make some configurations to Nvim-Tree to make it look and work a little bit better. So I'm going to go down to Hossein, press Enter, and then down to Plugins, and then I'm going to press Enter on Nvim-Tree to open that file. I'm going to run Nvim-Tree toggle again to close it. Soon we're going to be adding a keymap to open and close the file explorer more quickly, but before we do that, I want to add some configuration changes here. We're going to go to this setup function, and we're going to add a table. In Lua, this is pretty similar to an object in JavaScript. It has keys and values. There are a lot of options you can configure here. I would check out the Nvim-Tree documentation to learn more about that. Let's open up Nvim-Tree by doing Nvim-Tree toggle. One of the things I don't like are these arrows. I think they don't look very good. And as you can see here, the arrow when the folder is closed is bigger than the arrow when it is open. I want to change that. Let's close the tree. And in here, I'm going to add these lines. I got how to do this from the documentation. Essentially, within the renderer, we have icons, glyphs, folder, and then in there we can specify the arrows that we're going to be using when the folder is closed and when the folder is open. As I've mentioned, I'm using Mesload Nerd font, and that allows me to use these icons and see them on my terminal. Make sure you're using a Nerd font for this to work on your machine. Let's save and quit, and then let's open up Neovim again. Let's open the Explorer, and as you can see here, the arrows now have changed. Let's go back to the plugins directory, open up Nvim-Tree again, close the Explorer. Next thing I'm going to do is add these lines. This makes it so that working with the File Explorer and window splits works properly. And finally, I want to change the color of the arrows themselves. To do that, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to add this line. In Vim, highlight groups define how things look and the colors that things will have. This modifies the highlight group that the arrows use to get their color. If you want to use another color for the arrows, you can change this value. Remember that the repository with all of my code will be in GitHub, and you can reference it to copy things and add them to your own configuration. Let's save this and quit. Let's open Neovim again. Let's open the File Explorer. And as you can see here, now they're blue instead of the dark gray that they had earlier. Finally, as I mentioned, we want to create a key map to open and close the Explorer quickly. So let's go over to Lua, Hosian, Core, and then we're going to go here to Keymaps, close the Explorer, and then we're going to go to the bottom to our plugin Keymaps section. Down here, we're going to add Nvim-Tree, and we're going to do keymap.set, normal mode. I'm going to do leader E, and that's going to run Nvim-Tree toggle and CR, which means enter. Let's save that. Let's quit. Let's open up Neovim again, and then I can do leader E and leader E. Awesome. There's one more thing I want to add to the File Explorer, and that's VS Code-like icons for my files. But to do that, we have to add another plugin. So let's do leader E to open the File Explorer. Let's go to Lua, Hosian, and then we're going to go to plugins-setup. Let's close the Explorer with leader E. Let's go to the bottom of the file with Shift G. Then we're going to add here a plugin for our icons. We're going to add it right here. It's called nvim-web-dev icons. I'm going to save this file. It's going to install the plugin. I'm going to press Q, and then I'm going to quit Neovim to reflect our changes, and then open Neovim again, and let's do leader E. And as you can see here, the Lua files now have this fancy icon for them, and there will be a lot more for JavaScript files and a bunch of other different things. The next thing I want to do is configure a nice looking status line. So let's go to Lua, Hosian, plugins-setup. We're going to install another plugin. Go to the bottom of the file with Shift G. And then down here, we're going to add the plugin for our status line. This plugin is called Lualine. Let's save this file. It's going to install it automatically. Press Q. Then let's press : right quit. Let's open Neovim again, open the File Explorer, then we're going to go to Lua, Hosian, plugins directory, and we need to add another file here to configure and enable Lualine. To add a file with the Explorer, we can use A, and then down here we have a prompt for us to write the name of the file. We're going to do here lualine.lua, and then press enter again, and the file has been created. You can see it here in the File Explorer. Let's press enter to open it. Let's close the Explorer with leader E. And now we have to import the plugin again. And now we can call lualine.setup to enable it. Let's write to the file. Remember that we need to import this file in init.lua. So let's open the File Explorer, move up here to init.lua. Let's close the File Explorer. Then let's add require hosian.plugins.lualine, which is the path to the file. Let's write, and then let's quit to reflect our changes. And then let's open up Neovim again. And you can see now that down here we have a fancy status line. Pretty cool. I want to make some changes to it to make it look a little bit nicer. I'm going to open the File Explorer, go to the Lua directory, Hosian, plugins, and then Lualine. And again, we can add a table in here with our configuration changes. The Lualine plugin actually has a Nightfly theme, which is the same theme I'm using for Neovim, so we're going to use that. We have to also require it. It's found in lualine.themes.nightfly. And then I'm going to change some of its colors. This is a table with the new colors I'm going to use. To change these colors, I'm going to do lualine_nightfly.normal. So in normal mode, we're going to have a background of blue. And then I'm going to do lualine_nightfly.insert, so that in insert mode, we're going to have a color of green. Then I'm going to do nightfly.visual, so that in visual mode, we're going to have a violet color. And then for some reason, the Nightfly theme doesn't have settings for command mode. So we need to add all of this, which basically sets command mode so that the text is bold and the color is yellow and the text is black. Now that we've set all of those properties, down here in the table, we have to do options is equal to another table with theme equal to Lualine Nightfly. Let's save that and quit. Let's reopen Neovim. As you can see here, now we have our new colors in the status line. If I change to insert mode, that's what we get. If I change to visual mode, that's the violet. And then if I do colon for command mode, the yellow for command. And with that, we're finished with configuring the status line. Note that Lualine as well as Nvim-Tree will both make use of the icons plugin we installed earlier. The next plugin we're going to install is called Telescope. It's a fuzzy finder that makes it really easy to find files and text throughout your projects. It's one of those plugins I honestly can't really live without, so let's get into installing it. Let's open up the File Explorer and move over to Lua, Holcyan, Plugins-Setup, close the File Explorer, go to the bottom with Shift-G. We're going to add 2 lines here. The second line will install Telescope itself, and the first one is a dependency that will help Telescope perform better. These 2 lines actually make use of a table to specify first the name of the repository, and then we have here some custom options that we add. So this runs make after installing the plugin, and then this we're specifying that we want to use this specific branch of Telescope. So let's save this. Going to install those 2 plugins. Press Q. Remember that if you need to copy and paste these, you can check out my repo for reference. Now we have to configure Telescope as well. So let's open up the File Explorer with letter E. Let's go up to Plugins and let's press A to add another file, and it's going to be called telescope.lua. Press enter and then enter again to open it, and then letter E to close the Explorer. Alright, now we want to import it. We're actually going to do 2 imports here. The first import is to import the Telescope plugin itself, and the second one is to import the Telescope actions so that we can specify some custom keymaps for Telescope. So down here we have to run telescope.setup, and inside we're going to add a table where we can define our custom keymaps for Telescope. These guys. We're going to be using Control K to move to the previous selection, Control J to move to the next selection, and Control Q to send items to a quick fix list. I'm going to show you this in a second. We also have to add this line, telescope.load extension fcf, to make use of the other plugin we installed, which is the dependency that will make Telescope perform better. Let's write to this file. And now before we start using Telescope, let's define some keyboard commands to activate it. Let's open up the File Explorer, go up to Core, go to our Keymaps file, close the Explorer, go to the bottom of the file with Shift-G, and then we're going to add a section here for Telescope. We're going to add these keymaps. So this first one, leader FF, will allow us to use Telescope to find files in our project. The second one, leader FS, will allow us to find text throughout our project. This third one, leader FC, will allow us to find the current string the cursor is on throughout our project. This other one, leader FB, will show us our active buffers, and leader FH will show us help tags. And now before we finish, I almost forgot, we have to import the telescope.lua file from init.lua. So let's open the File Explorer, go to init.lua, close the Explorer, and then we're going to add here require holcyan.plugins.telescope. We're going to write and quit, open up Neovim again. So now we can use Telescope. I can use leader FF to find files. As you can see here, we have a list of the files within our project, and I can use Control K to go up and Control J to go down. Let's say I want to find the keymaps.lua file. I can type here keymaps.lua and it gives me that result. I also have a file preview of it on the right hand side. I can press enter and it'll take me to that file. On the other hand, let's say I want to find a specific string within my project. I can use leader_fs. Then let's say I'm looking for keymap.set, and we have a lot of those. We see a preview of how it looks like on the right hand side, and we can just pick one. Let's press enter. It'll take us to that file and to that specific line where it is. Those are the primary two functions that I use with Telescope. It really helps me with navigating in big projects. It really is a lifesaver and I really enjoy using it. There are a lot of other things you can do with Telescope. I'm not going to be going into them in this video. You can check out other videos about it on YouTube and also read the documentation. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is set up basic code auto-completion with snippets. And after we have that ready, we're going to add smart code completions with LSP. So we're here in our .config/nvim directory. Let's open up Neovim. Let's open up the file explorer with leader E. Then we're going to go down to Lua, Hosian. Let's open plugins-setup.lua. Close the file explorer. Go to the bottom. And then we're going to add a couple of plugins here for auto completion. So first we're going to add these three plugins. Nvim-CMP is going to be the plugin that we use for auto completion. CMP-buffer is actually a source. What this means is that it will allow Nvim-CMP to recommend text from the current buffer. In contrast, CMP-path is another source, but this one is for file paths so that Nvim-CMP can recommend to us different directories or files when we're writing out a path. I'm also going to add some plugins for snippets. We're going to be using LuaSnip as a snippet engine. CMP_LuaSnip is another source. This will allow Nvim-CMP to show us snippets in our auto completion. And friendly snippets is just a collection of a lot of useful snippets for a lot of different languages. Let's save this file and Packer will install all of those plugins for us. Awesome. Now we actually have to configure Nvim-CMP to enable it. Let's open the file explorer. Let's go to plugins. Let's press A to add a new file here. It's going to be called nvim-cmp.lua. Press enter and enter again to open it up. Close the file explorer. So now that we're in this file, we have to import two things. The first is Nvim-CMP, the plugin for auto-completion, and LuaSnip, which is our plugin for snippets. So let's import those two with protected calls as we've done earlier. As you can see, we're first importing Nvim-CMP into the CMP variable. If it's not installed, then return. And then we're importing LuaSnip into the LuaSnip variable, and if it's not installed, then return. Now we want to load these snippets from the Friendly Snippets plugin, so let's add this line. This will load them for us. Then according to the documentation, we want to add this line. You can check the documentation for that or my repo to copy this into your config. And then we're going to run cmp.setup to configure and enable Nvim-CMP. This is going to have a table inside, and then we're going to configure our snippets by adding this. You can find this in the documentation, or also you can copy it from my repository. And then what we want to do is set up our keyboard mappings for auto-completion. To do that, we're going to add these lines. Essentially, Control K and Control J will allow us to navigate through the suggestions. Control E will close the suggestion window, and we can use Enter to choose a selection. Then we have to configure the sources for auto-completion. As you can see here, we're going to be using snippets from LuaSnip, the buffer plugin for text within the current buffer, and also the path plugin for file system paths. With that, the basic functionality for auto-completion is pretty much ready. Let's save this file. We also have to import it from init.lua. So let's do leader E, and then let's go to init.lua, close the file explorer by doing leader E again. And then we're going to go down here, add require hosian.plugins.nvim-cmp. Let's save this file and let's close Neovim. Now let's open Neovim again. Let's go to our Lua, Hosian, plugins, Nvim-CMP, and let's see now what happens when we type something. Let's type out something that is found in this buffer like LuaSnip. Let's do Lua, and as you can see here, we have recommended LuaSnip and LuaSnip_status. We can navigate the results with Control J or Control K, and then we can choose a result by doing enter. This will also work with file system paths, so if we do // we'll get recommended the files that are within the current directory, and we have a preview of what those files look like. We can also scroll through the file by doing Control F to scroll down and Control B to scroll up. This will also work with snippets, so let's say I want to do an if statement in Lua. I can do if, I have a snippet recommendation here, I can do Control J, I get a preview of the snippet, and if I want to use it, I press enter and it fills it out for me. I can also automatically change the condition by just starting the type. So if false, for example. Awesome, so that's working really well. Now that we have autocompletion ready, we can move on to configuring LSP. LSP is built into Neovim and it stands for Language Server Protocol. It'll give us the ability to have really smart auto code completions and also the ability to perform code actions to fix problems in our code, find things like where a class is defined or where it is referenced, and also being able to rename things in a smart way. To get this configured, let's open up the File Explorer by doing letter E, and then let's go down to Plugins-Setup. Let's close the Explorer with letter E again. Let's go to the bottom of the file with Shift-G. We're going to have to add several different plugins to get this working properly. The first plugin will be in charge of managing and installing LSP servers. We're going to add it like so. It's called mason.nvim. It's basically going to be our primary source of truth for managing and installing all of our LSP servers. LSP is built into Neovim, but the LSP servers themselves need to be installed. And then the other important plugin that we need will be used for configuring the LSP servers. We're going to add it like so, and this plugin is called Nvim-LSP config. We also need to add the following plugin, which will help us bridge the gap between Mason and Nvim-LSP config. It's called Mason LSP config. You'll see how all of this will tie in together soon. Let's save this file, which will install those new plugins. Let's press Q to close that window. And then we want to configure Mason first. Let's open the File Explorer, go to the Plugins directory, and we're going to add a new directory here for everything that will concern LSP. Let's press the A key, and then we're going to add here LSP and finish it with a / to make sure that it's created as a folder. Let's open that folder, press A again, and we're going to type out mason.lua, which will be the name of the file for configuring Mason. Let's open that file. Now what we want to do is import Mason and Mason LSP config into this file by adding these lines. As you can see here, we're using protected calls again to make sure that the plugins are installed, and we use the name of the plugin to import it. If these aren't installed or if there's an error, nothing else will happen. Next, we want to configure Mason first. It's important that we write this first, so we'll do mason.setup. That's all we need to do. And then we want to configure Mason LSP config. We'll do .setup, and then in here we're going to pass a table. In here we can add ensure installed. I'm going to add here the list of LSP servers that I'm going to be using for my projects. You can check out the documentation for Mason LSP config to see all of the servers that it supports. All right, and with that, let's save this file. We have to again import this in the init.lua file. So let's open the File Explorer. Let's go to init.lua, close the File Explorer, and then we're going to add here require plugins.plugins.lsp.mason. And let's save that. Let's quit Neovim. Now let's open up Neovim again, and we're going to do :mason, press enter, and you're going to see here that it's installing the LSP servers. Once it's done, they're going to appear here in installed. It installed all of the LSP servers that we had specified in the mason.lua file. Now that the language servers have been installed, we can actually configure them. So let's close this window by pressing Q, and then let's open the File Explorer by doing letter E. Let's open this Lua folder, go into Halcyon. Then we're going to go to Plugins-Setup because we want to install some additional plugins to make all of this work properly. Let's close the Explorer and go to the bottom of the file by pressing Shift-G. We want to add the following plugins. CMP-nvim-LSP will allow us to configure the LSP servers so that they appear in Autocompletion. LSP Saga will add enhanced UIs to our LSP experience. It's really cool. And I'm also using the TypeScript.Nvim plugin to add further functionality to the TypeScript server. This plugin will allow me to do stuff like renaming a file and updating all of its imports. And finally, we're adding this lspkind.nvim plugin. This will be used to add VS Code-like icons to our auto-completion window. Let's save this file so that the plugins get installed. Now that they're installed, let's press Q, and then let's open the File Explorer with letter E. Then let's move over to the plugins directory, the LSP directory, and then we want to add a file called lspconfig.lua. We can do this by pressing the A key and then typing out the name of the file. Now let's press Enter and Enter again to open that file. In here, we're going to configure all of our LSP servers. We need to add these 3 imports to import LSP config to configure our servers, CMP nvim LSP so that we can configure the smart code auto completion with LSP, and the TypeScript plugin so that we can have the enhanced functionality for the TypeScript LSP server. Next, we're going to be defining some keymaps. So we're going to say vim.keymap in a local variable, and then we want to define a function called onAttach, which will take a client and a buffer. We'll be using this function to enable a specific set of keybinds for whenever we're editing a file in a specific language that we do have an LSP server for. For example, if I have the TypeScript LSP server configured and I'm editing a TypeScript file, then the LSP server is available, and then I'm going to have access to these keybinds. Let's add these keybinds in here. You can find this code in my repository. First, we have an options variable, which will define a specific set of options that we want these keymaps to have. So you can see here that we're assigning it to each of the keymaps, and then all of these will be normal mode keymaps. We're going to be making use of LSP Saga for a lot of this functionality, which brings us really nice UIs with LSP. I think the best way to show you how these keymaps work is by finishing the configuration and then showing you with actual code. Also know that down here we have a special keymap that is only available for the TypeScript server. This makes use of the TypeScript plugin so that we can rename a file and update all of its imports. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is define this variable right here called capabilities. We're going to be using it to enable auto-completion for each of our LSP servers. We have to add it to each of the configurations we're going to define next. So to give you an example of how you configure an LSP server, let's do the HTML server by doing lsp config, then you do bracket with the name of the server, so this one is called HTML, then we do .setup, and then in here we pass a table with our configuration. And here you want to pass capabilities, like so. This will enable auto-completion for the HTML server. And you also want to do onAttach so that we can have the keybinds we defined available whenever we're editing an HTML file. The configuration for my TypeScript server is a bit different because I'm using the plugin. It looks something like this, so it's TypeScript.setup, and then in here we're going to pass a table with server equal to capabilities and onAttach. Slightly different, but not much. Alright, I'm going to quickly add the other servers that I'm using, so that's CSS. I also have one for Tailwind CSS. Remember, all of these I installed with Mason. Finally, we have the Lua server. You can copy all of this from my repository. The Lua server has some specific details that we needed to configure to make it work properly, like making the server recognize the global Vim variable that is available to us when we're editing our Neovim configuration. Don't worry too much about that. Alright, so let's save this. Now, like the rest of our Lua files, we have to import this in init.lua. So let's open the File Explorer, go to init.lua, close the Explorer. We're going to add here require ocean.plugins.lsp.lspconfig. Awesome, save that. We also have to configure LSP Saga, which is the other plugin we're using for LSP. So let's open the File Explorer, go to the LSP folder, press A to add a new file, and we're going to call it lspsaga.lua. Let's open it up. This one isn't very difficult. We just have to import the LSP Saga plugin by doing something like this. So we're just importing it with a protected call again with the name of the plugin. And now we have to add saga.init_lsp_saga. And this takes a table inside. We're going to add a couple of options here like so. This one called Move in Saga is for moving around. We're going to be using Control K and Control J like in the rest of the stuff we've configured. I'm going to show you the specifics of how these work very soon as we're almost done. Now let's import it in init.lua by doing require plugins.lsp.lspsaga. I think we should require this one before LSP config, so I'm going to put it above it. And that's save. Now the final thing we have to do is configure some Nvim-CMP specifics. So let's open the file explorer. Let's go to nvim-cmp.lua, close the explorer. And now we're going to add another import to this file. This is going to be importing LSP kind to enable the VS Code-like icons to our auto-completion. And now we want to configure our sources. Let's go to the end of this file. As you can see here, this is where we configure our sources. We want to add here the nvim_lsp source so that LSP is also a source for our auto-completion. Finally, we have to add these lines right here. This is to configure the VS Code-like icons with LSP kind. Again, you can copy this from my repository. Let's save this file. Let's quit Neovim. Alright, now that we finished our LSP configuration, let me show you everything you can do. I'm going to be opening up a small project I started recently for my blog. I'm in the root directory. I'm going to open up Neovim by doing nvim. I'm going to open the file explorer. As you can see here, we have a bunch of these fancy icons from one of the plugins we installed. That's pretty cool. Let's go to the pages in this project. This is a Next.js project written in TypeScript. It doesn't have that much right now. Let's go to the _app.tsx file. Let's close the file explorer. Now let's go down here and start typing. I wrote NA and I can see here that I have a bunch of different recommendations from my LSP. Got variables, keywords, constants, methods, functions, and we can see the information about them on the right hand side, which is pretty cool. Note that I'm using Control J and K to move through these. If I press enter, I'm going to use it, and it also imports it automatically to my file, which is really nice. Let's undo that. The other thing I want to show you is our keyboard shortcuts. So if I go over here to nav and I want to see its definition, I can do GD, and LSP Saga will show me the definition of this nav function, and I can actually make changes to it in this pop-up window, which is pretty cool. If I want to open this, I can press enter. Let's jump back by doing Control O. Pro tip, Control O and Control I are amazing in Vim. So you can do Control I to jump forward and Control O to jump backwards. It's really nice. And if I do GF, I can see the definition and the implementation, the references, and have a preview of it on the right hand side. If I press enter, I'll go into it. The enter key works because of the keymaps we defined. Let's jump back by doing Control O. I can also do GI to go to the implementation. Let's go back. Let's say I remove this import and we have an error down here, which is the LSP working, by the way. I can jump to that error by doing closing bracket D, and the light bulb indicates that I can do a code action to find a solution to it. Let's do leader CA, which is our keybind to C code actions. And in here we have a recommendation of adding an import for component/nav, which is the import we deleted. So let's press enter and we get the import back and the problem is fixed. Really nice. Note that if you have more than one error, so let's remove those two imports, you can do closing bracket D to go forward and then opening bracket D to go backwards. All right, let's undo all of that. Let's remove the import for the nav again, and let's go down here. If I want to see the error once my cursor is above the nav, I can do leader D. Note that for a lot of these, so for example, leader GD, you can close it by pressing the Q key. If you do uppercase K, then you're going to do a hover doc and get more documentation on wherever your cursor is. Some of these you just have to move around for them to go away. Let's try doing a rename. So let's do leader GI to go to the implementation of this nav, and then I want to change this name. Let's do leader RN to rename, and then let's say I'm going to call it nav with 2 V's. Let's press enter. It gets renamed, and let's jump back to the other file, so Control O. And as you can see here, this import gets updated with the 2 V's, and this reference down here in line 8 also gets the 2 V's. Really nice. Note that this change is not saved across your files. When you do this and you want to save all your changed files, you can do :WA. I want to also show you the TypeScript file rename functionality. So if I go to the File Explorer and go to nav, and I want to rename the file, I can do leader RF, and then let's do nav with 2 V's here. And then if I go back to the pages_app.tsx, you're going to see here that in the import we get the nav with 2 V's, which is awesome. Alright, now that we're done with LSP, the next thing we want to configure is code formatting and linting, which is also pretty important. I heavily rely on Prettier for formatting my JavaScript and TypeScript code, and ESLint for linting and diagnostics. We're currently located in the .config/nvim directory. Let's open up Neovim and open the File Explorer. Let's go to the Lua directory, Colorscheme, and then plugins-setup, as we need to install some more plugins for this. Let's go to the end of the file. What we're going to use for formatting and linting is the following plugin called null-ls. We're going to use this to configure the formatters and linters like Prettier and ESLint, but to install them, we're going to use Mason for this as well. So we're going to add this other plugin called Mason-null-ls. It is very similar to Mason-LSP config, but this one is for the linters and formatters we're going to configure with null-ls. So up here in line 68, it's actually LSP servers, linters, and formatters that Mason will install. Let's save this file so that we can install the plugins. And then once that's done, we can press Q. And now we can go ahead and configure this. Let's open the File Explorer. Let's go up to plugins and then LSP, as this stuff is LSP related. We're going to press the A key to add a new file, and we're going to add null-ls.lua. Press enter. Enter again to open it. Now we have to import the null-ls plugin by adding this protected call to import it like we've done with the other plugins. Notice that as we've configured LSP for Lua, we're getting LSP functionality in here. This says that we have an unused local null-ls. We're going to use it soon. Alright, and now we're going to have 2 different variables. One is formatting, which will have a value of null_ls.builtins.formatting, and the other one is going to be called diagnostics with a value of null_ls.builtins.diagnostics. And then we can call null_ls.setup. And here we're going to have a table. We're going to have a set of sources. These sources will be linters and formatters that Mason will install for us. So before we add them, let's actually go ahead and install them. Let's save this file, open the File Explorer, go to the mason.lua file. In here, we want to import the Mason null-ls plugin. As you can see, we're just using a protected call again to import this plugin. And then down here, we're going to use it much like with Mason_LSP config. We're going to do Mason_null-ls.setup. And then in here, we're going to have ensure_installed. Much like with the LSP servers, we're going to add here the linters and formatters that we want Mason to install for us. We're going to have here Prettier, Lua, which is a formatter for Lua code, and ESLint, which is our linter for TypeScript and JavaScript code. You can verify the linters and formatters you can install here in the Mason null-ls plugin documentation. Now that we've done this, let's save this file, and then let's go back to the null.ls file, and let's add our sources here. So we have prettier, which is a formatter. To add it, we can do formatting.prettier. Then we have a formatter for Lua with style Lua. And then we have the ESLint linter, which we can add by doing diagnostics.eslint_d. We want the formatting to happen whenever we save a file. To do this, we're going to add the following code down here. I took this from the null.ls documentation. You can find it there or in the repo linked in my description. Additionally, we also have to define the following variable up here. Again, this is directly from the null.ls documentation. You can find it easily in my repo. Now that we have that ready, what's missing is we need to import this file in the init.lua file. So let's go to File Explorer, init.lua, and then down here, we're going to do require ocean.plugins.lsp.null.ls and save. Let's quit. I'm going to show you this in action again in my TypeScript blog. I'm in the root directory. I'm going to open Neovim. And because we haven't installed the linters and formatters before, I'm going to open Mason by doing :Mason. And you'll see that in the background, it's been installing these. We have style Lua for Lua code. We have ESLint for our diagnostics. And then we have prettier. I forgot to mention that you can also open up Mason and you can use the number keys to go see your LSPs, your debuggers actually, linters and formatters, see what you have installed, and you can also browse this list, and if you see something that you want to install, you can just press the I key and it's going to start installing it. So as you can see here, I don't know what this is, but it installed it. You can uninstall it by doing uppercase X. Pretty cool. Now that we have prettier installed, let's open the File Explorer, let's go to Pages, and then let's go to _app.tsx. Let's close the File Explorer, and let's change some of these things up. I'm gonna add a bunch of spaces here, here as well, and then I'm going to save this file. And as you can see, now that we saved it, prettier does the formatting and fixes everything for us, which is exactly what we wanted to achieve. Additionally, this blog doesn't have an ESLint config file, so up here we're getting an ESLint error. Nonetheless, works through the LSP, so I can use the same keybinds that I used before. To see this ESLint error, I can do -D, and it tells me that there is no ESLint configuration found in my project. Great, so that means that we have formatting and linting working properly. One of the final important things we should configure is using Treesitter for proper syntax highlighting in our projects, as well as some plugins for auto-closing, brackets, parentheses, quotes, and tags with the help of Treesitter. So I'm back here in the .config/nvim directory. We're going to open up Neovim, and then we're going to go to our Lua Colorscheme plugins-setup.lua. Let's go to the end of the file with Shift-G. And now we need to install the plugins for configuring Treesitter. We're going to add the following to install Nvim-Treesitter, which will help us configure things. And this run function I took directly from the documentation, so you can check this out there. And also you can copy this from the repository linked in the description of this video. Additionally, we want to add the following 2 lines to install Nvim auto pairs and Nvim-TS auto tag to help us with closing stuff like parentheses, brackets, quotes, and also tags. Let's save this to install these plugins. I'm honestly not sure why, but I got an error when I first saved this, and the second time I saved it, it worked fine. I think everything is good to go. I'm not really sure why that happened. Let me know in the comments if you know what I should change here. Alright, now that we have these things installed, let's open the File Explorer, and in the plugins directory, we're going to add a new file by pressing the A key called autopairs.lua. We're going to open that file up, close the Explorer, and then we're going to import the plugin like so. Same as always with a protected call. Then we can configure auto pairs by doing autopairs.setup. In here we want to add the following lines to enable Treesitter compatibility with auto pairs. Again, you can find this in the documentation or my repository. We also want to configure auto pairs so that it works nicely with our auto completion. Let's add the following lines to configure this. All of this is from the auto pairs documentation. You can find this stuff there or also my repository. And then let's import this file back in init.lua, like so. Ocean.plugins.autopairs. Now let's go ahead and configure Treesitter as well. So let's add another file inside the plugins directory by pressing the A key and typing out the name of the file. It's going to be called treesitter.lua. I'm going to open it up, and then I'm going to import the Nvim-Tree plugin here, and then I'm going to do treesitter.setup, and in here I'm going to add the curly braces. We're going to enable highlight, so this means that we're going to get better syntax highlighting in our projects. We're also going to enable indent for better indentation through Treesitter, and also we're going to add auto tagging. Note that to enable this, you also need to have the auto tagging plugin installed. After doing that, we want to add an ensure installed field here to add all of the languages that we want Treesitter to work with. Down here, we're also going to add auto install is equal to true. This means that if these language parsers are not installed, they'll be installed automatically when we open up Neovim. These are languages that are mostly relevant to my work. You can remove from here or add things. You can check out the Nvim-Tree documentation to look at a list of all the languages that Treesitter supports. Awesome, let's save this. Finally, let's go back to the File Explorer, go to init.lua, close the Explorer, and then down here, let's import ocean.plugins.treesitter. And save. Let's quit Neovim. Alright, I've opened this TypeScript file from my blog to show you the difference that Treesitter syntax highlighting makes. It's pretty subtle here, but you'll find yourself in other situations where the difference might be more noticeable. Right now, Treesitter is enabled. Let's disable it. So I can do :ts disable, highlight, and that's going to turn it off. And then I can do ts enable highlight, and that's on. I also want to show you auto tagging working, so let's add here a p tag. Once I write the first tag, it's gonna automatically add the closing tag, which is really nice. Additionally, we now have auto closing of parentheses, opening brace, it auto closes it, opening quote, same thing, that sort of deal. Now I'm back in the .config/nvim folder. Let's open up Neovim. There's one final thing I want to add. This is going to be really quick. It's some Git integration. Let's open up the File Explorer, go into Lua, Ocean, plugins-setup. Let's go to the end of the file. And down here we're going to add the following plugin called Git Signs. Let's save this to install it. Nice. Q to close that. Then let's open up the File Explorer, go to the plugins directory, press A to add a new file, gitsigns.lua. Let's go in there. Let's import the plugin with a protected call like so. And then the only thing we have to do is call gitsigns.setup. Let's save this file. Now let's open up the File Explorer again with letter E, then go down to init.lua, go to the end of the file, and add require ocean.plugins.getSigns and save that. Now that that's done, let's quit Neovim. Now I'm back in the directory for my blog. This is a Git repo, so I can show you how this integration works. Let's open up Neovim. Let's open up the File Explorer, go to pages, then _app.tsx, close the Explorer, and then let's add some new lines. As you can see here, we're getting green lines on the left-hand side, which is the Git integration working. Let's delete these. Let's delete line 4. And as you can see here, we have a red dash indicating that we deleted that line. Everything looks good. Let's quit out of here. All right, guys, so that's it. We're done. I know that was a lot. This is a really jam-packed video with a lot of information Thanks for making it to the end if you made it this far. This video was a lot of work to make, so if you enjoyed it and found it helpful, make sure to leave a like down below. It really helps me out. The next video will be about Tmux and how we can combine Neovim and Tmux to create a really awesome workflow. That one should be a lot more straightforward. Leave a comment down below if you have any questions or feedback for me. Thank you so much for all of the support, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see more content like this from me. See you guys in the next one. Peace.